Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. The first 5 main topics are as follows. In the first topic, we'll read about the rooftop solar potential in our country and what are the reasons behind its less utilization. In the second topic, we'll read about the emergency provisions and its application back in 1970s and what the governments in the future can learn from that. In the third topic, we will inquire about the federal issues which are involved with the functioning of Central Bureau of Investigation. Followed by the fourth topic, where we will learn about some important geological heritage sites in our country and the poor state of their conservation. Finally, in the fifth topic, we will read about the health hazards which are associated with the coal mining in our country. Towards the end, there will be news snippets especially curated to help you excel in the prelims examination, so stay tuned. The article throws light on issues which has actually curtailed the rooftop solar installation in our country, leading to India missing its ambitious target of 175 gigawatt of installed renewable energy capacity by the year of 2022. What were the causes behind India missing its ambitious target? What is actually India's rooftop solar potential? We will cover that and much more, aligning with your GS3 paper's theme of renewable energy. So let's first try to understand what is India's current energy mix. So as per the Central Electricity Authority, currently 59% of our current installed capacity comes from the fossil fuel sources, or basically the thermal power, which consists of your coal, lignite, gas and diesel. And only 39% of it actually comes from the renewable energy sources such as solar power. Then if we move to the second table, it tells us that India's peak power demand has been consistently on rise. So for example, in the year of 2023 itself, there existed a 10 gigawatt shortfall, which basically means that if our energy demand was here, the energy which we were about to produce actually lagged much behind it, causing a 4.47% of the deficit. Thus, these two tables give us two important realizations. The first is that as the most of our installed capacity is relying on the fossil fuels which basically releases the greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, which basically just absorbs the extraterrestrial radiation which is released by the earth, thus leading to the global warming. Just remind in your mind the recent heat waves which were taking place. Or for example, as per the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the world temperature has increased by 1.2 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial levels. Remember that we have also the part of the Paris Agreement where we have set an ambitious target to reduce this rise of temperature up to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. So it is obvious that the first table is telling us that we need to convert towards the renewable energy, and at the same time we need to produce more energy as well in quicker time because our peak power demand is on the rise. Thus, let's try to understand what is the share of renewable energy in this total energy mix. So let's say currently if our total production is around 400 to 420 gigawatt, of that, around 130 gigawatt comprises of renewable energy. And out of this renewable energy, the share of solar power exists around 54%, followed by wind, which is at 34%, biopower, which is at 8%, and the small hydropower. Thus, it shows the importance of solar power even in the renewable energy mix, and as you can see from the table, the annual installations of such solar power systems has been consistently on rise. So why there is so much impetus on this solar energy? Well, because of the virtue of India being a tropical country, India receives around 250 to 300 days of sunny days, or basically the solar power. The solar power, which actually translates into 2200 to 3000 sunshine hours per year. What it basically translates is that India is receiving around 5,000 trillion kilowatt hour of solar energy per year. And if we look at its data on the basis of the integration at the one particular area, then that is around 4 to 7 kilowatt hour per meter square per day. So what we can actually draw from these three tables is that India has got immense solar power potential which we can harness to achieve energy security. And in the direction of this regard, the government has taken several policy measures as well as provided for various financial incentives. So for example, back in the year 2010 itself, the government launched a Jawaharlal Nehru solar power mission under which it set a target to achieve solar power installed capacity of 20 gigawatt of energy by the year of 2022. However, with the change in the government in 2015, this target was actually revised to 100 gigawatt by the year of 2022 itself, out of which 60 gigawatt had to come from solar parks, solar power parks such as your Bhadla solar park in Rajasthan or your Charanka solar park in Gujarat or your recently launched Pavagada solar park in Karnataka. The government also, to promote such installations at residential level, it started providing 40% subsidy on the photovoltaic solar panels for installations in the residential segments. And it also created a dedicated e-marketplace where it tried to bring the consumers, the vendors and the banks for the streamlining of such installation. The result of such effort has been translated, and it can be seen that by the year of 2023, our total solar power installed capacity is around 73 gigawatt, which makes us the fourth largest country in the world in the terms of solar power installed capacity. This particular solar power sector has witnessed a growth or the compounded annual growth rate of 59% between the years of 2011 to 2022. And at the same time period, the tariffs has actually declined from being rupees 9 in the year of 2011 to a meager rupees 2.14 in the year of 2023. So what we can translate from this is basically that, let's say there was a company, a power distribution company, and it was providing solar power. So earlier they were charging rupees 9 per kilowatt hour, but now the rate has been significantly declined to just rupees 2.14 per kilowatt hour. And if we look at the average annual capacity addition in this solar power, that has been around 11 gigawatt. If we look at such installation in the terms of states, Rajasthan is leading the way with 16 gigawatt, followed by Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and then there is Telangana. Now, as we can see that the government has put a lot of effort to increase the solar power installed capacity in our country, a major share of that has to be achieved from this rooftop solar, as we can see from this ambitious target which government set, that 40 gigawatt out of the 100 gigawatt which had to be achieved, it will come from rooftop solar. So first let's try to understand what is rooftop solar and what is its potential. So basically, let's say that all the places where the sun rays are falling, whether it is a vacant space or the rooftop of your houses or of any commercial building, all of them are basically receiving this raw solar energy. So the idea is that if we install a photovoltaic panel here, that will convert this solar energy for our utilization purposes. Thus, from the vacant spaces which are just lying idle, we will not only be able to generate electricity, but that can also help us in our income sustainability. So that was the whole idea. Now, as per the Center for Energy, Environment and Water report, this solar panel or rooftop solar has got immense potential. So for example, if we look, first try to understand how this system works of rooftop solar. So basically there are two components. One is your off-grid solar which is the example of which is this particular house, as it is not connected to any larger utility grid. The second system is where the rooftop panels which are installed on the top of your house, they are connected to the larger utility grid. So basically what happens that, let's say on 1 month basis, I require around 1 megawatt of electricity. But this rooftop panels which I have installed over my house, they are generating 3 megawatt of electricity. So basically I am generating a 2 megawatt of surplus. Now there exists a energy meter or your net meter. What this net meter will do, that because it will just transfer this energy surplus to the utility grid, which will ultimately be transferred to various corporations, industries, all of that. Let's say for starting the agricultural pumps to be used by the farmers, all of that can happen and this energy is being transferred. Now let's say that there are some days when it is raining, like today, or for example it is winter, and thus the solar panels which I have installed, they are not receiving much of the solar energy. Thus there is taking place an energy deficit. So in this case, this net meter will actually allow for bi-directional flow, where now I will be taking the energy from the utility grid. So in this case, at the end of the month, this net meter will allow for a billing where, let's say, in the time period of that month, I provided for 20 megawatt of electricity and I consumed 10 megawatt of electricity from this utility grid, which means that I am at 10 megawatt of surplus and thus I will get a little bit of payment for that. So this is the whole idea of generating the rooftop solar. Now, if we look at this Kiev report, it says that this rooftop solar installation has a potential to generate 637 gigawatt of solar energy. Now, to understand the significance of this, let's say that even if we are able to install 1/3 of this, which basically means around 210 gigawatt, then that will be able to supply to the energy need of all residential buildings in our country. That is the significance. Along with this technical potential, there also exists economic potential. So for example, from this rooftop solar, we can not only meet the household's electricity demands, but at the same time, it can also provide for economic viability. Thus, for example, if you are generating surplus electricity, we can earn from that. And then there is a market potential as well, where we can just start selling this electricity. Let's say if we create inter-country power grids under your international solar alliances. So, because the rooftop solar had so much of the potential, it was being targeted by the government for a large scale installation. And with these efforts, there has been the installed capacity of this rooftop solar has actually increased. It is being led by Gujarat here with 26% of the installation, followed by Maharashtra, Karnataka, Rajasthan. In Gujarat, it has reached to almost your 3.5 gigawatt. But as we can see here, try to understand this, that the total installed capacity from this rooftop, it stands currently as low as 11 gigawatt in 2023. In 2022, if you remember, under the revised target, we had set that we will generate 40 gigawatt of rooftop electricity from this photovoltaic panels. But by 2022, we were able to generate only 7.5 gigawatt. So what is exactly the reason, the causes behind such abysmal penetration of rooftop solar panels? The first reason is the limited consumer awareness. Obviously, let's say the consumers which we are going to target to install such rooftop solar capacity, majority of our population, currently 65%, lives in the rural areas, where again their energy demand is not as high as the urban areas, and at the same time they do not feel such immediate need to install such rooftop solar. Also, there exist a lot of technical issues for such installation in the large scale dissemination of the rural areas. The second major issue is the high capital cost. So let's say I come from a rural area, but I have been watching the Analyst on Vajiram. That has actually enlightened me quite a lot. I have actually become a knowledgeable person. And I get to read about the solar energy installation and its various benefits, and I say that okay, I am going to install rooftop solar over my house. Thus, I go to purchase such photovoltaic panel. What is the current market cost of such one panel? That is around 40,000 rupees per panel. So the initial capital cost itself is so high that it actually excludes the larger middle class section of our economy. The third major reason is the inconsistent policies of the government. So try to understand that when we were talking about this technical potential of 637 gigawatt, almost 85% of that technical potential, it actually is in the range of 1 to 3 kilowatt, or basically the small individual houses who are just going to install some small photovoltaic panels over their houses. 85% of potential lies in this category. Even out of this category, 30% of it actually lies in the range of 0 to 1 kilowatt of small solar power installations. So basically we are talking about those houses or the apartment buildings which we have, on which we can just install small solar photovoltaic panels. Now the idea is that okay, if such installation has to be done over the large scale of such houses, the government shall provide some subsidy to them to decrease this initial capital cost. However, such scale of people who belongs in this 0 to 1 kilowatt of category, earlier they did not fill in any government policies. They were completely ignored, and there was no such subsidy which was available to this particular section. Thus, there were inconsistent policies of the government which further exacerbated the issue, and to deal with which the government brought the PM Surya Ghar Yojana under your interim budget of 2024, where it said that we are going to install rooftop solar panels and we will try to take this solar power electricity to almost 1 crore households, and they will get around 300 units of electricity free every month. Then the government said that it is going to incentivize the urban local bodies and panchayats by providing financial assistance. And now as you can see that this particular section which was earlier being ignored by the government, now that has featured under the scheme, where the government is going to provide 30,000 subsidy for 1 kilowatt system, 60,000 for 2 kilowatt, 78,000 for 3 kilowatt system. Further, the government is going to provide collateral-free low-interest loan, and obviously there is an additional income which houses can earn. So for example, when we were talking about the surplus which was being generated here, so we can sell this surplus, and from that we will have additional income as well. Also, as we will be using renewable energy, that will lead to reduction of 720 million tons of CO2, and that will actually help us to achieve our Panch Amrit targets. The Panch Amrit targets which we set for ourselves in COP26, where we said that by the year of 2030 itself, we will be creating or generating 50% of our total energy demands from the renewable energy. By the year of 2070 itself, India has set itself a target that we are going to become a carbon neutral country. So again, this PM Surya Ghar is going to help us there as well. Also, some technical aspects here to increase your marks in your mains answer. The first is the technical feasibility test. So let's say earlier if I wanted to install rooftop solar over my house, I had to go to the government office to get a clearance certification for this TFT. Earlier it used to take 2 to 3 months, but now under PM Surya Ghar, the government has said that such approval shall be disseminated within 15 days, and at the same time, if I am installing solar panels up to only 10 kilowatt, then no test will be required. The power distribution companies has been charged with additional responsibility, where they are going to bear now the cost of strengthening the distribution infrastructure if that infrastructure is up to 5 kilowatt. Also, the article in the news provides for certain suggestive measures which can be implemented. The first of which is that we need to incentivize specifically the customers who fall in the category of small solar power users, such as from 1 to 3 kilowatt. The second it says is that there shall be a low cost financing options which has to be available, and such loans shall be disbursed with immediate effect. The third is that we need to tap the micro, small and medium enterprises. Why? Because they contribute to the 30% of total energy consumption. At the same time, we need to promote the research and development specifically in the solar power generation. So for example, we can create some important storage systems. We can create the photovoltaic modules, which we are basically relying on China. We are importing from China. The next is that we can create a solar photovoltaic panels technician kind of programs, which was actually launched back in 2015, and that will actually not only lead to a skilled workforce, but it will also create employment opportunities. Lastly, the report suggests that we need to improve the net metering structure, the grid integration structure, and we need to update the model building codes for the faster installation of rooftop solar. On the basis of this discussion, try to solve this particular practice question. If possible, comment your answers in the comment box and we move forward to the next news. The editorial by former Vice President talks about the trampling of democratic values during the emergency which was imposed in our country back in 1975 to 77 and the lessons that shall be learned from it. This issue of emergency and its provision forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of federalism and the emergency provisions. So let's first try to understand what is emergency. The emergency has been listed in your part 18th of the Constitution from your Article 352 to Article 360, where the central government gets certain extra constitutional and far overreaching powers in the terms of the state government, thus to enable the central government to tackle certain abnormal situations which has emerged to protect the sovereignty, unity and the integrity of our country. As the state governments get subordinate to the central government, it basically, the proclamation of emergency, it converts the federal structure of our constitution into unitary without any formal amendment under Article 368 of the Constitution, which was held by B.R. Ambedkar as a unique feature of our constitution. Now, there are three kinds of emergencies which exist. One is your Article 352, which provides for national emergency, your President rule under Article 356, and your financial emergency under Article 360. However, due to the constraint of time, we will confine our discussion only to the national emergency. The national emergency, which is proclaimed by the President under Article 352 of the Constitution on three important grounds. The grounds are war, external aggression on our country, or your armed rebellion. However, before 1978, such national emergency could have been declared on the grounds of internal disturbances as it was done by Indira Gandhi back in the year of 1975. That is why, to prevent such misuse of power, the 44th Constitutional Amendment, it added the term armed rebellion and removed the internal disturbances. Also, it provided for that now the President can proclaim such emergency only on the concurrence of Cabinet and not merely on the advice of Prime Minister as it was done back in 1975. Then, does such proclamation of emergency by the President falls under the purview of judicial review? Absolutely yes, and that was held by Supreme Court in the Minerva Mills case of 1980. The second important step is parliamentary approval. So, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act said that both the houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, shall approve such proclamation of emergency within 1 month time period. So, what if the Lok Sabha is not in house or the Lok Sabha has been dissolved? What if the President then proclaims emergency at that time period? So let's say such proclamation of emergency, if it has been passed by Rajya Sabha, it will exist for the time period of 30 days since the reconstitution of Lok Sabha. So Lok Sabha has got 30 days of time on which it will decide whether to approve the emergency or not, and if it does not approve, then that emergency will collapse. Another safeguard was that earlier such emergency, once passed, could be extended for indefinite period. Now such emergency requires periodic approval every 6 months by both the houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And what is the majority which is required to give such approval to implement the emergency? That is a special majority. So let's try to understand this special majority. The special majority, which basically says that there shall be a simple majority of all the membership of the house. So that basically means that 50% plus 1 members of the house shall agree for the proclamation of emergency. So if the house strength is 543, that means 272 members shall agree. The second is that 2/3 of the people who are present and voting on that particular day shall also agree to such proclamation. So let's take an example that there was 500 members who were present in Lok Sabha when such proclamation of emergency was being discussed. The first requirement is obviously 272 members shall agree. The second says that 2/3 of the present, which basically means 66% of 500. So that means that the emergency will only be passed if 330 members of Lok Sabha that day agrees for passing of such emergency. So now we have understood about the proclamation and approval. How we can remove such emergency proclamation? The first is that President can revoke such emergency anytime just by passing the subsequent proclamation, and for that purpose he doesn't require the assent of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. The second is that under the 44th constitutional amendment, Lok Sabha can pass a resolution to remove the emergency by simple majority. So to approve the emergency we require special majority. To remove it there is much simpler procedure, so we require only a simple majority. Again, to approve the emergency, the assent of both the houses is required, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. However, to remove it, the approval of Rajya Sabha is not required and only Lok Sabha can just pass a resolution for the removal of emergency. Now, what is actually the effect of such national emergency on our overall governance structure? The first is that when it comes to the executive, now the center becomes powerful to direct the state on any executive function on any matter. Thus basically means that the state government has now become subordinate to the central government in the matters of executive function. The second is that when it comes to the legislative functions, now Parliament can make laws on any state subject under the 7th schedule. That basically means that now not only on the union list and concurrent list, the Parliament can subsequently make laws on state list items as well. So that basically means that, okay, does the state government cannot make any law? They can still make laws. However, the Parliament has got a concurrent power, and if there will exist any kind of contradiction between the state law and the central law, obviously the central law will prevail. At the same time, now the President can also pass ordinances on the state law. When it comes to finances, it is obvious there is an emergency taking place. So the President can actually reduce or cancel the transfer of finances from the center to state. Then the life of Lok Sabha, that can be actually extended 1 year at a time. Coming to fundamental rights. What happened to your fundamental rights? Well, under Article 358 of the Constitution, the fundamental rights which you have got under Article 19 of the Constitution, such as right to freedom of speech and expression, right to freedom of movement across the country, all of that gets automatically suspended. So as we have seen that the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978, it actually provides for certain safeguards. Does it also safeguards your fundamental rights under Article 19? Absolutely. So 44th Constitutional Amendment says that such suspension of Article 19 can only take place on 2 grounds. One, there is war, and other, there is an external aggression. In the case of armed rebellion, there is no automatic suspension of Article 19. Then the Article 359 says that the enforcement of fundamental rights gets suspended except two articles. One is Article 20, which provides for you the right to protection against conviction of offences, and Article 21, which provides for right to dignified life. As we have understood the provisions of emergency and its larger impact on the governance structure, now let's try to see what happened back in the year of 1975 to 77. Well, between 1961 to 71, the Indira Gandhi had actually emerged as a very popular leader among the Congress party, and she has kind of got an absolute control not only over the government but also on the Congress party. Thus, as in the words of her principal secretary P.N. Huxer, she had created a kind of a committed bureaucracy. A bureaucracy which is actually committed to the ideologies of the party which is in the rule, rather to the ideology of the constitutional principles. Also, this was the very same time when her pro-poor policies such as nationalization of banks in 1969, abortion of privy purse in 1970, or her very famous election slogan of Garibi Hatao, it had actually created her image as a mass leader, which further swelled into the heights of popularity with her staunch effort and the non-controlling demeanor when it came to the Bangladesh Liberation War, where India actually defeated Pakistan, even though USA was trying to create pressures on Indira Gandhi. As in the words of Lord Acton, with power comes corruption, and the absolute power, it actually corrupts absolutely. And that's what actually transpired, where the Indira Gandhi now started creating a kind of an absolute government where there was no space for the voice of opposition. However, the government of that time was actually mired with various kind of corruptions which were taking place, the red tapeism at the ground level, the large scale of poverty and the rising inequality. Thus, there was rising discontent among the larger populace as it was visible with the Nav Nirmar movement which took place in Gujarat in the year of 1974, where the students, the middle class, they actually rose their voice against the rampaging corruption. A similar movement was taking place in Bihar called as Sampoorn Kranti or Total Revolution by the socialist leader J.P. Narayan, where he asked the students, the labor unions, all of that to raise their voices against the corruption. Also, the year 1974 was marked by the nationwide strike of the biggest union of the country, which was a railway union under the George Fernandez, against which the government took certain stringent steps to curb down this union movement. The backdrop of this also was the tussle which was taking place between the government and the judiciary of the day, where the government was trying to implement certain socialistic principles, but that was actually violating the fundamental rights of the people, which judiciary was trying to safeguard. Thus, in Golaknath case of 1967, the Supreme Court held that the fundamental rights of the people cannot be curtailed and cannot be amended by the parliament. But the government bought 24th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1971, under which it said that it has got amending powers which is sacrosanct and it can amend any part of the constitution. Under Keshwanand Bharti case of 1973, the Supreme Court took a kind of a Madhyam Marg of Buddha, where it said that yes, indeed, the parliament can amend any part of the constitution. However, there exists a basic structure of which the fundamental rights are an important part of. Thus, you cannot curtail or completely repeal them. Thus, this tussle actually manifested and the last straw was drawn in the Raj Narayan verdict of 1975, in which the Indira Gandhi's election to the Lok Sabha was actually declared null and void because of the misuse of power and the corruption and the government machinery in the local elections, and because of that her election was declared null and void. And that is why at that particular time the staunch leaders such as Morarji Desai and Jayaprakash Narayan, they actually called for an all India anti-government strike. This was taken by Indira Gandhi as the case of internal disturbances, and thus she called upon the president, who imposed the emergency on 25th of June 1975. What was the effect of such imposition of emergency? Well, all the opposition leaders such as Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Lal Krishna Advani, Jayaprakash Narayan, Chaudhary Charan Singh, Mulayam Singh Yadav, all of these people were actually put behind the bars of the jail. And various organizations such as RSS, Jamaat-e-Islamiyah, Communist Party of India, Marxist, all of that was declared illegal and anti-national organizations, and they were completely banned. There were also a large-scale trampling of the fundamental rights of the common people, as more than 35,000 people were actually arrested and detained. The elections to not only to Lok Sabha but to various state legislative assemblies were postponed and precedent rules were imposed. The lawmaking was done by the government through the ordinance making route of the president under Article 123 of the Constitution, and thus making them non-challengeable in the court, as well as the various trade unions and worker rights were curtailed as well. That is why the article highlights the need of how not to govern the state, where it says that in the democracy there shall exist no place for despotism, and there shall be no brazen violations of the provisions of the Constitution. Rather, we shall adopt the democratic governance based model on the basis of people's participation. Another mistake done by the government of that time was that it took the poor people as just living on the bread alone. Rather, the people in 1977, by first time electing a non-Congress government, showed to the government their awareness about their political rights. The article also highlights the need for strengthening of the pillars of democracy, such as your bureaucracy, judiciary, and media, where instead of committed bureaucracy, there shall be a committed bureaucracy towards the principle of the Constitution, where there shall exist an independent judiciary and there shall exist an independent and non-biased media. As famously said by Lal Krishna Advani at that time, you were asked to bend, but you actually crawled. So we'll keep these important lessons in our mind when we are writing an answer on any democracy-based answer, and we move forward to the next news. In light of the arrest of the Delhi's Chief Minister by the Central Bureau Investigation or CBI, its disputed role in the federal structure of our country has come into the forefront of the debate again. This issue of federalism and the role played by CBI forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of important institutions. So let's first try to understand what actually is CBI. CBI is basically the premier investigating police agency of our country, which also coordinate on the investigation purposes with the Interpol international countries. Now it works under the Ministry of Personal and Public Grievances, which basically falls directly under the control of Prime Minister's office. And when it comes to the Prevention of Corruption Act of 1988, the superintendence of CBI vests with the Central Vigilance Commission. So, does like CVC, CBI is also a statutory body? The answer is no. To understand that, we'll go a little bit in the backdrop. When a special police establishment was created in 1941 by the British government during the World War II. The idea was to keep check on bribery and corruption, especially related to the war-related procurement which was taking place. In 1946, there was passed an act of Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, which basically made this special police establishment a formal agency to check on corruption cases. Now, in independent India, there was formed a Santhanam committee to check against prevention on corruption in the year between 1962 to 64. Which recommended for the creation of a Central Bureau of Investigation to check on the cases of corruption, and thus CBI was formed in the year of 1963. So, it draws its power from this very same act of Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, and as it has not been created by any act of the independent Indian governments, it is not a statutory body. The director of the CBI till the year of 2014 was actually selected from the recommendation of a committee, the committee which was actually formed by the Ministry of Personnel. But after the Lokpal Act of 2014, there take place a committee, the committee which consists of Prime Minister, the leader of opposition, Chief Justice of India or any judge of Supreme Court, which basically suggest for the selection of the director of CBI, who then is ultimately appointed by the Ministry of Personnel. Now, the cases which are dealt by CBI, they are from very wide range of spectrums, from your serious crimes, your defense of India, your fraud, cheating and social crimes, black marketing or profiteering, crimes committed by extremists or various other variety of crimes which are passed to this CBI by the central government. Now the question arises that this CBI, how it becomes the part of the debate between the issue of federalism or the issue which takes place between the state and the central government. The idea is that as per the section 6 of the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, there requires a consent called as general consent, which shall be given by the state to CBI, and only then CBI can take cases in that particular state. Such consent actually helps CBI to function as a police, because police lies in the entry to in the state list. Now the sanction behind central government creating such CBI and then state governments providing them such general consent, that sanction comes from the entry 80 of the union list, which actually empowers the central government that it can create a police force which can function across the states. So for example, let's say there is a case which has taken place in the state of Karnataka, and there has the culprit who has committed the crime in Karnataka, he is coming from Tamil Nadu. Now in this particular case, the jurisdiction of which police will apply on this particular person, that can become debatable. That is where the entry 80 of union list comes in, which says that the central government can create a neutral agency which can function across the spectrum of the states. So what is the issue of federalism here? Various state governments has actually given the argument that this CBI has started functioning as a politico-legal ring fencing by the central government, where it just specifically tries to aim and curtail the movement of opposition. So for example, let's say there is a scam which has happened, and that scam has been done by the minister of the central government. The central government appoints CBI to handle that case, and then that case actually drags on for a long period of time. Can we guess that there is a kind of a bias which is persisting in this CBI? On the other hand, most of the cases which are registered by CBI, they are actually on those people who are basically in opposition. And that is the argument which is being raised by the states, and that is why 8 states such as Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Punjab, Bengal, they actually withdrew their consent from the CBI, which basically means that now CBI cannot take any particular case in these states. So what is the implication of withdrawal of general consent by the state? So as per the KL Dorji versus CBI judgment of 1994, there are 2 implications. First is that such withdrawal of general consent, it will not affect the pending investigation which CBI is already taking place in certain state. The second is that the jurisdictional high court or Supreme Court can still direct for CBI investigation in a particular state, even though if that state has withdrawn the general consent. Now in this debate, what is the stand of the central government? The central government says that CBI is an independent agency and it is not the limb of the center. This was basically the argument which was passed by the Solicitor General of India while he was arguing in the court that the state shall not withdraw their general consent. However, recently there has been several other rising issues with CBI as well. The first is obviously that it has been termed as a caged parrot. The reason for that is that many a times the central government, if there is a sensitive case which is taking place, let's say there is a NEET scam which is taking place right now, and let's say suddenly a name of a minister comes in who is in the central government and he is involved in this particular NEET scam. Suddenly this particular scam will be handled to CBI, and then it takes years for CBI to solve such cases. This is exactly what happens with your Bofors scandal. Then there are certain other important cases where such delayed investigation has actually been observed, such as for example your Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984, or for example your Arushi Talwar murder case. Also, with such delayed investigations, there is taking place a loss of credibility when it comes to CBI. Again, because the opposition is trying to just diminish CBI as the caged parrot of the central government. Also, if you look at the data, more than 68,000 corruption cases which were actually probed by CBI, they are still pending trials in the court for more than 20 years, as per the Central Vigilance Commission itself, which basically shows that this CBI has actually got a very limited power. Because first of all, you require the consent of the state, only then you can investigate there. So now let's say West Bengal has withdrawn the consent and there is a hideous crime which takes place in the West Bengal. Even then the CBI cannot just go there and investigate the cases. The second is that obviously it has got the shortages of personnel, because there are a lot of complaints that there takes a bias in the just the promotion as well as in the inclusion of the new people, particularly in the CBI. Then there exists a lack of accountability. So keep this in mind that CBI does not fall under the purview of RTI Act of 2005, Right to Information Act of 2005. Thus, CBI does not has any accountability. The article actually talks about certain reforms which has to be taken. So obviously one reform will be coming in your mind as well, that why we are still relying on that Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946. We should give CBI a statutory status, and that is being said by the LP Singh committee since 1978. So obviously when we will give it a statutory status equivalent to the status of Chief Election Commissioner, or for example your Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the CAG. So that will make CBI a much more independent body, and it will help us in delinking the CBI from the administrative control of the government. The third is that as per the 24th report of the Departmental Standing Committee, we need to increase the strength of officers in the CBI, as well as with the modern technological needs, we need to improve the infrastructure of CBI as well. Then as per the second Administrative Reform Commission report of 2007, there shall establish a statutory charter which can actually enlist the kind of duties for which CBI will be enlisted for. Right now it is just on the whims and the fantasies of the central government. So keep all these suggestions very dear to you for the upcoming examination, specifically for your GS2 paper, and we move forward to the next news. The lead editorial highlights the poor status of protection of the geological heritage sites in our country, and it provides for certain innovative and suggestive measures. So these India's geological literacy forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of environmental conservation. Let's first try to inquire what is the status of geo-heritage sites in our country. Well, what are geo-heritage sites? Geo-heritage sites are basically the features of significant importance which kind of provide us an insight into the Earth's evolution. So for example, if there is a crater which was formed millions of years ago, we can guess that it contains a lot of clues for how the life originated in our planet or in that particular area. We can study a lot about the bacteria there, the viruses there, the archaea present there, and thus it forms an important geological heritage for us. Thus, UNESCO in 1972 launched a UNESCO World Heritage Convention for specifically the protection of such geological sites. On that line, there exist right now 169 global geoparks in 44 countries across the world. And in our country, there are currently 34 National Geological Heritage Monument sites. These sites are declared by the Geological Survey of India. The Geological Survey of India, which was actually created in 1851 under the Governor Generalship of Lord Dalhousie, and it works currently under the Ministry of Mines. So when it was created back in 1851, the major purpose was to actually identify the coal reserves in our country. Now it functions under the Ministry of Mines and its headquarters is in Calcutta, West Bengal. So when we have kind of got a brief idea about the geological heritage sites, what are some important sites in our country which has been mentioned in the article? The first is your Dhala Meteoritic Impact Crater, which is in the Shivpuri of Madhya Pradesh. And as per the article, it might have formed between 1.5 to 2.5 billion years ago. We are talking about the Cretaceous period, right? So thus it shows us the impact of maybe a celestial collision which might have taken place at that particular time of time. And thus it provides an important evidence to us for the origin of life, specifically in the Indian subcontinent, which obviously at that time would not have collided with the Himalayas, right? Also, there exists a Lonar crater lake which is in the state of Buldhana, Maharashtra, which recently turned pink, and it was quite in the news because of some archaea which actually turns this water into the pink, right? So that is in Buldhana, Maharashtra, and that is supposed to be around 5,76,000 years old. So when these sites are so old and it can provide us like so many clues for the evolution of our human life, and they are so important for the subject of anthropology, it is obvious that you might be guessing that we would have a strong conservation structure for these geoheritage sites. The irony is, and also as highlighted by the article, that we are actually going to other planets. We are studying Mars and Moon to just get the clues that how the life originated on our planet, or how the life originated after all the Big Bang which took place 13.8 billion years ago, but we are not preserving these actual evidences which lies on the ground. So for example, the article says that the development activities and the rapid real estate growth which has taken place, that is actually impacting such geoheritage sites. Example of that is the stone mining operations, for example. So currently the area which is under this stone mining operation, that area exceeds 10% of the total area of our country. The second is the lack of regulatory powers with the Geological Survey of India, about which we were talking about, for such conservation. So even if Geological Survey of India declares such National Geological Heritage Monument site, unlike the Archaeological Survey of India, it doesn't have any protection measures or certain measures which it can implement. So for example, the district administration in Varkala in Karnataka, it actually demolished a very important cliff which was recently discovered. Also, there has been certain steps which has been taken place in regard to bring certain laws. For example, the National Commission for Heritage Sites Bill 2009 was brought, or the Geoheritage Sites Bill of 2022 was brought. But our lawmakers has remained completely ignorant about the importance of these geoheritage sites. That is why the article suggests that we need to create inventory for the prospective geosites in the future so that we can preserve them in a much better condition. Also, there shall be legislation which shall be brought under the framework of Biodiversity Act of 2002, and the article suggests for the creation of National Geoconservation Authority. So keep these things in your mind. Also look at the 34 important geoheritage sites which are there in our country. So just have a quick look at them and we move forward to the next news. A study published by the National Foundation for India has actually highlighted the adverse impact of coal mining on human health, which forms an important component of your overarching theme of prelims paper, that is health and issues. So let's first try to understand what are the major reasons which has been highlighted in the news where the population actually depends quite a lot economically on coal mining. So obviously there are a lot of important coal mining regions in our country such as Singrauli, Asansol, your whole Haldia port, Paradeep port range which is there. Then there is your ranges such as Jharia, Ranigunj, Talcher in Odisha, Karanpura, all of that. In these regions, there are certain specific regions which has been highlighted by the report, such as Korea and Raigad in Chhattisgarh, Dhanbad and Ramgarh in Jharkhand, and Angul and Jajpur in Odisha, where this research was conducted and the exposure of these people who quite significantly depend upon coal mines for their living, that was measured. And as per the report, 65% of the participants actually were facing chronic bronchitis, acute respiratory disease such as asthma, and various kind of skin ailments such as eczema, dermatitis, and fungal infections. Also, these people are incurring high amount of out-of-pocket expenditure such as between rupees 300 to 1000 monthly, and they are surviving on meager incomes. Now the report highlights a major issue. It says that we are actually as a country striving for green transition. So for example, we were talking about Panch Amrit targets which we have set for ourselves. But if we will transition towards that, the first article from where we started today, if we will do that transition towards the renewable energy, doesn't it is going to significantly impact such coal dependent region? It will actually leave these people who are not highly skilled. They will actually turn jobless, and there will take place a lot of outward migration from this region as well. So the report basically suggests that there shall be some adequate health safeguards which shall be provided to these particular people. Keep these suggestions in your mind. We move forward to the next section of the news, where we are going to cover some important news which can help you to eliminate some important statements in the prelims examination. The first news talk about the recently opened India's largest leopard safari. So is it the first in the country as well? No. It is South India's first leopard safari and India's largest safari. And where it has opened? It has opened in the Bannerghatta Biological Park, which is basically in Karnataka. Now it has termed as largest because as per the requirements laid down by Central Zoo Authority, area of 20 hectares has been demarcated and fenced for this leopard safari. Just a quick overlook about the leopards. The leopards population has been actually increased, being 12,800 in 2018 to around 13,874 in the year of 2022. And which state boasts the title of holding the highest population of leopards? That is your Madhya Pradesh, with around close to 4,000 leopards, followed by Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and the Chhattisgarh. The leopards are basically the smallest of the big cat family. So the task for you guys today is that just go and have a bit of search that who all comprises the part of this big cat family. A kind of a hint is that there are 5 big cats generally considered. Smallest of them is leopard. This leopard is listed as in the vulnerable category in IUCN list, and in your Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, they have got the highest protection under the Schedule 1 of the Act. Now, the official creditor committee was in the news. Why? Because it has actually restructured the debt for Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, which has been facing acute financial crisis since the time period of 2022. If you guys can remember the scenes where the public of Sri Lanka was actually thronging into the parliaments and the president was actually fleeing from these protesters, right? So for that purpose, there was created an official creditor committee in May 2023, whose aim was to restructure the Sri Lanka's debt after it defaulted on the external debt. This official creditor committee comprises of 17 countries, one among which is India as the part of the neighborhood first policy, and then there is a Paris Club. Paris Club, which comprises of various developed countries who provide various kind of financial credits, restructuring of financial credits, all of that for the least developed economies. Is India part of a Paris Club? No. Now, a question appeared in your prelims 2022 on the Paris Club, which has been endorsed by G20. So enough suggestions has been provided to you. Attempt this question, comment your answers. We move forward to the next news, which talks about methane emission. Why methane emission has been in the news? Because recently Denmark became the first country in the world to tax the livestock farmers for greenhouse gas emissions. Now this methane, which is released by this livestock, it comprises of a very harmful greenhouse gas. Why it is considered as such? Because methane, as per NOAA, it has 87 times more heat trapping potential in comparison to carbon dioxide. And as per the United Nations Environment Program, the livestock on which the Denmark is going to put the tax, that contributes to the 32% of the total anthropogenic emission. So if we just look at the anthropogenic emission causes, there is agriculture, you can look here. So obviously the animal husbandry is part of that. Then there is biomass, the energy release, as well as the waste which is being generated by the humans. For the last news of the day, we have got a very interesting news for all the cricket lovers around, which is about the Duckworth-Lewis and Stern method. Well, earlier in 1990s, when it was originally devised by Frank Duckworth, who actually died recently, sadly at the age of 85 years, and Tony Lewis, later some statistics measures were actually added and amended by the Stern in 2014. So now it is called as Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method or DLS method, right? What is the backdrop of creation of such DLS method? So back in 1992, a very interesting incident happened. There was a World Cup semi-final which was taking place between the South Africa and the England. So at one point of time, South Africa, which was chasing, it required 22 runs in 13 balls. But as the luck would have it, suddenly the rainfall occurred. So can any one of you guess what would have been the revised target for South Africa? The revised target was 22 runs in one ball. So now obviously this is considered as impossible. And why such impossibility was achieved? Because at that time most productive over method was used for the determination of such rate, right? So let's say, for example, if we want to set the target, right, in a rain affected match. So let's say one team bats first and that team has made in 50 overs 300 runs, right? Now in the first 25 overs, the team batted really well and made around 200 runs. In the last 25 overs, the team was able to make only 100 runs. So as per the most productive over method, when the target will be revised for the second team who is batting, and if the rain has affected the match, and let's say the match starts again, then that team which is chasing will require 200 runs in 25 overs because that was the most productive overs of the team who batted first. That is why this method was completely discarded. On the other hand, the DLS method was adopted. What DLS method says? DLS method relies upon two important sources which you require to make runs. The first is obviously that how many overs are left and how many wickets has been lost, right? So these are the two important sources. To understand that simply, let's say that there are two teams. One is me, one is you. We are having a cricket match here. So let's say that you have left with 5 overs and 5 wickets, right? On the other hand, I am left with 7 wickets and 4 overs. Now as per the DLS method, because there are more number of batters who are left, I have got much more resources to make the runs. Because even if I make quick runs and I get out, I have got more batters to come down. On the other hand, you have got only 5 wickets left, even though you have 1 extra over. So if the rain affects the match at this stage, I will get lower score to chase, while you will get a higher score to chase because my probability is much better. This is exactly what happens, that as you can see here, as the wickets loses, the resources has been declined. So happens with the number of overs left. However, there are certain disputes according to the DLS method as well. Because for example, when the IPL was taking place, the KKR's batter, they can bat just till 7 and 9 overs. In T20 matches, you don't require that much of batting depthness. Even one good over can change the favor of the match in one particular team. So that is why there are certain disputes as well. However, we have just understood how the DLS is calculated on the basis of number of overs left and number of wickets left. This was first used in 1997 and officially adopted in the year of 1999. With this, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.